Dave, thank you so much for joining us today. It's such an honor. You've had such a storied career. You just, in the last few weeks, jumped into this new global security advisor role. Formerly for the past 5 years before that, you were the, global chief information security officer. So I'm so excited to have you with us here today. And, I'd love to hear more about, as we start your journey, like how did you get to where you're at today?
Sure. Thank you for having me. Yes, my new role is the Global Senior Advisor. I'm 2 weeks into the role. Prior to that, for a little over 5 years, I was the Global Chief Information Security Officer for the firm and was engaged by the firm, to globalize cybersecurity in 150 countries and for all 440,000 practitioners within the firm. Prior to that, I was a Chief Security Officer with the cybersecurity responsibility for other corporations that were looking to design, build, and launch global programs. And then before my career with the corporations, I was in the FBI for a number of years, worked a number of their different programs from organized crime, counterterrorism, counterintelligence. But towards the end of my career, spent a significant amount of time running cyber operations.
That's great. I know that from working with the FBI, I'm sure you would recommend to everyone that you should definitely build a partnership to get, as you would say, actionable threat intelligence from your local FBI offices. What advice would you have there?
Yes, it's like anything else. If you're going to effectively defend against these adversaries that are out there, whether they be nation states, multinational criminals, hacktivists, terrorists, or insiders, you have to do it collectively. There are certain verticals that have come together, such as the financial services industry, that partner in sharing intelligence, but a lot of it also comes from these private-public partnerships with government agencies as well as corporations, because to your point, there is a lot of threat intelligence out there. But what you're looking for is specific, actionable threat intelligence that is specific to your firm and your corporation that helps you protect your stakeholders.
That's great. And, I know that you pivoted from, obviously went from public sector to private sector working for a corporation. Now you've been at Deloitte now for almost 6 years, working in a partner-led firm. How has that experience been?
Well, it was a major change for me. Think about, starting in the FBI, which is a very command and control organizational structure, pretty much the same way in a corporation. There's one CEO. And when you come into Deloitte, it's a firm. And it's, multiple partnerships around the world with key leaders leading major transformations, not only for the firm, but for their clients. And as a result, it's a much more collaborative environment where you have to really spend a more significant amount of time collaborating, getting to know individuals around the world, working in certain committees with them, sharing information, making sure you seek their advice on how you can best integrate into the firm.
That's great. So many stories. I know we could probably spend an entire hour just talking about all the stories you have from your time with the FBI and then moving into the private sector as well. I want to talk about, part of our conversation, we always say as technology leaders, getting technology, buying technology is easy. It's really getting people to use it that's hard. How has that resonated with you and your career as a security leader? How has that resonated with you?
What you learn over time, we've had all sorts of transformational journeys that we've been on from technology, but the reality of it is culture trumps strategy all the time. And so when you think about it, our challenge always is integrating the technology and the business capabilities with your team, with the people that you serve as the global leaders within your corporation. And so you have to understand the culture, you have to understand the business objectives of the firm or the corporation you're working for, how they're going to market, who your competitors are, and what are those challenges, and along the way, who are the adversaries, particularly if you're in the role that I have, that could disrupt your journey.
Yeah, absolutely. And it's, I'm sure there's probably been some leadership principles that you've leveraged over your time as a leader that have helped you be successful. Can you share, what are some of those principles that you've had with your team?
Sure. What I've learned is, first, you need to really know who your stakeholders are. Who are your lines of business? Who are their leaders? And what are they trying to accomplish? When you pick your leaders to support your stakeholders, you have to be sure they have certain key capabilities. And those capabilities really start with them being authentic. Those individuals having authentic interest in the firm that they're serving or the corporation, an authentic interest in your particular profession, such as cybersecurity. You also need people that are transparent. They need to be able to explain and be open to discussions with stakeholders Because the idea behind security is to enable the business and take the friction out. You also want people who are very collaborative, who understand that nothing gets done individually, nothing gets done by an individual team, and that they need to step forward and be proactive in getting to know the individuals within the firm they need to serve.
That's a great point. And when I think about security, especially, we want security to be in the DNA of all the people in the organization. But obviously, you don't have everyone in the organization reporting to you. So you have to lead a lot with influence, right? To lead people to, have that security mindset. Maybe what are some of the ways you've helped instill that in the culture? You talk about culture. How have you instilled that security conscious culture inside Deloitte?
Well, the first thing you learn is what is the culture you're coming into. So if you think about coming from other organizations I've been in, I hired many people from outside the firm. So we came from a variety of cultures before we were even in the firm. And now the firm has a culture. But even within the firm, we're a global firm. As a result, you operate in Europe, Asia, the United States, Canada, South America. There's cultures there that you have to also be able to understand. And our teams are around the world. So I have teams, in all of those countries. As a result of that, you have to spend a significant amount of time understanding the business, understanding the culture. You can do a lot of formal things, such as develop communication plans, but a lot of the times it's answering the question why in a manner that people can understand. Why does it matter? Why are you implementing these types of programs? They seem to be, in some perspective, onerous sometimes or viewed as. So you have to be able to, one, take the friction out, and two, implement them seamlessly as you launch through the businesses, and three, have excellent leaders in the field that are able to meet with leaders. You've got to meet with the leaders and explain the mission and be very cognizant of the fact that they are going to market with all sorts of pressures and transformational issues that they're dealing with.
Yeah, absolutely. It's one of the things, you talk about people. I'm a big believer that we're all people first, and it's always good to get to know people as a person first. As you came to Deloitte, obviously it's a different environment being a partner-led firm around the world with different, operating differently in the different countries. Talk about how do you create those people connections? What are some of the leadership things you've done to help people connect with people as people?
Yeah. When I first arrived there, I met with, as I've been stating, key stakeholders for the different businesses. And I asked them what their challenges were, but I also asked them who within their particular business unit I needed to get to know and work with. Once you understand from their point of view who their key leaders are and the relationships you need to develop, you can't just do that virtually. You do actually have to go and meet people, shake hands, get to know them. And if you can do that, you can begin to learn who they are, their challenges every day, how they view their team. Because, Deloitte provides a variety of diverse capabilities around the world to global brands. So not every team is operating in the same manner when they're going to market. And you have to clearly be able to understand that and work with all of them.
Yeah, you speak to diversity. One of the things that, I can just imagine the geographic diversity. One of the things that impressed upon me, I had the opportunity many years ago when Deloitte University first opened up outside the Dallas-Fort Worth area. And I was able to go actually visit the facility, and the way they allowed people to connect and find people with similar interests, it was so compelling. And so I have to imagine that, it's been amazing probably to work with all those different diverse backgrounds, but at the same time, leading global initiatives, sometimes that can be challenging because we're all people and we all have our own human psychology to deal with. How have you kind of overcome challenges sometimes when you have a stakeholder that maybe isn't buying what you're selling from an internal standpoint?
Sure. Well, it's like anything else. You've got to understand their position first. They obviously are mature, sophisticated business leaders. And if they have a concern about what you're trying to accomplish, there's probably a basis for that. They've either had a prior experience, they don't understand it, they see it conflicting with their business model. So you really have to go and meet with them and understand what their concerns are. Once you understand what their concerns are, you've got to be able to explain your role in the firm, why you're going to market with them to protect them on their journey, and then think through collectively and together how to make it work.
Absolutely sage advice. And one of the things I have to imagine as you've had the career you've had, you've learned a lot of lessons along the road. What are some of the things that if you were to rewind the clock and tell your, early 20-year-old self, some advice, what sage advice would you give to your 20-year-old self about, things you wish you had known then?
Sure. Well, one of the things I would say is always try and work for people you admire. Look at your journey. It's going to be a long professional life. You want to be with people you respect and you can learn from. Second, I would say is slow is fast. Everybody's in a rush in some way to either get a job done, which is a good trait, but there also can be a little too fast of a rush to climb the ladder, to advance your career. And what you find if you go too fast, you actually don't learn your profession to the level you need to learn. Then when you are in the leadership position, when the real crisis happens, you can have significant challenges in managing the most important part of your professional career, which is dealing with senior global leaders and global crisis. So don't be in a rush. Often take a lateral move to learn more, and then enjoy it. Enjoy it. Be an individual who is grateful for where you have found yourself along the way and the challenges you've had. They've made you better, no matter how difficult they are. And just learn to respect other people's points of view.
No, I think that it points to, building trust too. They always say you earn trust by the spoonful, but you lose it by the bucket.
Right.
And so, I think establishing trust is also critical. What are some of the ways that you came in? It's been about 6 years ago now, I believe, that you joined Deloitte. How did you establish trust with your peers? Besides meeting them person to person, how did you build that trust with people across the firm?
Well, first, you have to be willing to be open. And again, we keep saying this, but spend time with people. The virtual environment that we've created today seems effective and efficient. And it is if you've already established relationships with the people you're now virtually dealing with. But when you first join a firm, as I did, I don't think the virtual environment works well. You have to be able to, and it was difficult during COVID, but I was there prior to COVID. But what I encourage everybody to do, you can now look at what are the lifestyles in a virtual environment and what are the lifestyles when you come in and you can meet people personally and have lunch with them or dinner. I strongly encourage you to get to know and meet in person your stakeholders and other key people within the firm. And as I've been saying, listen, who are they? Where did they come from? What do they see as their challenges? And then you can explain what you do for the firm and why you've been, engaged by the firm, to develop a cybersecurity or other type of security program. Absolutely.
And I'm sure having those relationships was paramount, because when the pandemic happened, I think you said you got relegated to the basement in your home.
That's exactly right.
If you had known you were working from a basement, you may have made different decisions than you had made before. So.
Yeah, it was interesting. I went from probably a 95% travel schedule to actually literally working in, fortunately, to finished basement. But I never had a home office because when you were in the FBI, it was always classified work and you had to go to the office. Other jobs, I was always in the office. It was kind of a pre-pandemic kind of professional lifestyle. And then you woke up one morning and you're home for a long period of time.
Yeah, absolutely. I think it's something we're all struggling with right now is, everyone was remote work and now we have hybrid work, but you can't really substitute that, up close personal time, getting to know people outside the office and who they are as people. Because a lot of what we do outside of work, directly relates to who we are when we show up at work. And so getting to know people as people is extremely important. So tell me a little bit about, the new senior global advisor role. So tell us a little bit about that new role. What's your mission in this new responsibility?
Sure. Well, when you think about my journey since I joined the firm, globalizing cybersecurity was the first global initiative from an internal perspective for an internal operational team. And you learn a lot of things along the way. How to deploy your capabilities around the world, what are the challenges in the legal, regulatory compliance environment, how do you manage a change in culture and a transformation? How do you hire team members around the world and bring them together collectively to work effectively and efficiently? When you think about that, there are other things the firm would now like to globalize. And a lot of the learnings that I've had along that journey, we want to apply to this journey for other things that we'll be globalizing in the firm.
That's great. And you did a great job also of kind of having your successor in mind already. And so they've already stepped in. Are you advising the person that succeeded you and their role taking on this, this global responsibility now?
Well, a lot of my leaders have been with me for a long time. And the individual that we selected to be the new global chief information security officer, very talented individual, has served other corporations, in-depth experience. I don't know if he really needs a lot of advice from me anymore. But I'm certainly available if he does need it. But we did consider succession planning for a significant period of time. We had a number of candidates, quite frankly, all from within the team, some from outside the team that we were looking at. And so you do want to have a portfolio of individuals that you're considering, and then let them compete for the position.
Yeah, it makes absolute sense. So, when you think about advice, there's a lot of people that will listen to our conversation that are taking that, they're looking for like, what are those 2 or 3 things I can put into practice tomorrow? What advice would you have for, aspiring security leaders that want to lead on a global scale? What advice would you have for them?
Sure. If you're a new chief information security officer, or maybe you're a deputy chief information security officer and you're coming into a firm, it seems a little bit prescriptive, but there's certain things you really do have to consider right from the beginning. Number 1, know the business. Don't start with bringing in a security program, security team, and telling people what to do. Spend time with the individual business unit leaders, learn their business, look at their trajectory, what are their revenue targets, and how are they going to market. Once you understand that, spend a significant amount of time with your CIO and other IT leaders who now have to develop a strategy to support those business leaders as they go to market. Then your job is to bring in the security capabilities. Now, how do you do that in a world where the adversary is globalized, there's supply chain risks, they're attacking firms with all sorts of techniques? You have to understand threat intelligence. And if you have the right threat intelligence capabilities, you'll be able to identify who is, in fact, specifically attacking this firm or this corporation. Second, who is attacking the clients of the firm or the corporation who could pivot to attack you because they want to get in the supply chain. And then you can begin to implement, a very mature cyber program. There's a lot of fundamental things you do in, cybersecurity, but there's some very specific things you do for firms individually, depending upon what vertical they're in.
No, absolutely. And it's, you have to, as you said, I think one of the most important things you said is you got to be a student of the business you're in,
right?
Because it's hard to change things if you don't first understand them. So always seek that mindset to understand the world you're in, the world you're working that's around you. So when I think about that as well, the other thing you said that really resonated to me is empowerment. Empower your people. Empower people closest to the problem within a governed framework to be able to make decisions and unlock that potential in all those people. It's always, I think the best leaders, and it sounds like you've done this in your career, is the best leaders ignite a fire in people, not under them. And so it sounds like you've done a great job building that culture within the teams you've led.
Thank you. One of the things I've made a habit of doing is actually going out and visiting with teams and their team members. Often it'll be in a kind of a lunch type conference room setting for a couple of hours. And I always ask them a couple of questions when I'm there. I ask each individual who's there at the table, tell me a little bit about yourself, what you would do. Tell me 1 to 3 challenges you have. And I want to listen. If you were me, what are 1 to 3 things you would ask me to change or do for you? And it's amazing what comes out when you talk to people one-on-one. What is their individual struggle and why are they struggling with it? What you often find is when you listen to multiple people talk about their struggle, there's some systemic issue that needs to be addressed that would serve them all better if we could resolve it.
No, that's great. So, as we wrap up our conversation, what advice would you, any parting words of wisdom you would give for their people listening to our conversation?
Sure. The one thing I would really emphasize is keep in mind your adversary has globalized. While you may be sitting in a particular country, you may be in a particular vertical, your adversary has actually globalized. Their team members are global. Their attack infrastructure that will attack you has been globalized. And when they get into your network and obtain your data, it is not going to stay within your country. And as a result, even though you may not see yourself as in essence, global corporation or global firm, the reality of it is you're up against a very sophisticated global adversary.
No, such great advice. Well, Dave, it's been such an honor to have a conversation and just, get wisdom from you and your experience. And I just wish you so much luck in your new role in Deloitte. And I know we'll continue our friendship and conversation. So thank you so much for joining us today.
No, glad to be here.